Well, welcome again this week to an analysis behind the news. I must say that when you look at these presidential candidates, that Hillary Clinton has got to be the luckiest woman alive. Here you've got a case where she won the caucuses in Iowa with 6 tosses of the coin, and it came up heads or whatever it was for her in every case, 1 to 64 odds. Now this latest eking out of her victory in the caucuses in Nevada is another case of casino luck, I guess. Because Reid called up the unions that are the union bosses at the casinos and urged them to get all of their union members out to the caucuses held in the casinos for these people and to support Hillary. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think you'd find that same case with the Republicans holding caucuses in the casinos for the employees there. At any rate, so she's the only one I know of that has won at the casinos in Nevada. Be that as it may, it's turning into a rather interesting race. There's some things I'd like to talk about it, but let me just say this. Do your research on these candidates. Look at the background of the individuals who are on their team. Who's running their candidacies? Who are their advisors? And that kind of thing. Compare it to lists of the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberger Group and that sort of thing. Then you will find, to your satisfaction, I think, who you should support or not support for election. I think you will find some surprises there. What we do here in the John Birch Society is we kind of expose everything about these candidates. We don't tell you who to vote for. We don't endorse anybody. We don't tell about the good things necessarily about a candidate. We're looking at the blemishes, if you will. The things that are happening behind the scenes that you would not normally see. And so we get a lot of criticism from people who support this person or that person, how we're slamming those individuals. Well, we slam everybody equally. We're an equal opportunity slammer, if you will. That's what we do. We try and expose what's going on behind the scenes that you wouldn't normally see. One of the most recent things that has become a real trouble, and something that we've warned about for quite some time, is the arming of the Kurds. Now, as we've expressed before, nearly every Republican candidate has come out in support of arming the Kurds. The problem with arming the Kurds is you don't really help the Kurds. The people you help are the armies of those factions of the Kurds, which by and large are very militant, and some of them even on the terrorist watch list. And so we see things starting to come up in headlines in newspapers like Kurdish militants test alliances over Syria. Here's another one. Turkey pins attack on U.S.-backed Kurds. We're getting into some real hot water with a NATO ally, Turkey. And technically, under the NATO treaty, we should be going to the assistance of Turkey because they are being attacked by Kurdish forces in some areas. I saw a BBC report the other day on television where the head of Turkey, and they have a lot to answer for, let me qualify what I'm saying here by saying that I'm not in that much support of the Turkish government, etc. All we've been saying is that arming the Kurds is going to further destabilize the area. Anyway, the head of the Turkish government was standing in front of the parliament just livid over the fact that the United States is arming terrorist organizations, terrorists on the watch list of terrorists. We are arming those Kurds. That help isn't getting down to the average Kurd. We can all feel sorry for the average Kurd. This help is getting to those militant armies run by the communists, the socialists, and that sort of thing. It's a real problem. Now, should we be involved in the Middle East? We have all sorts of people who are saying we should be involved, we should do this, we should do that, and the other. But I invite everybody to study history, if you will. Start with the Hittites and look there at 1000 BC. From that time forward, even before that, but that's a good starting point. From that time forward, 3,000 years ago, that whole area has been back and forth between this leader, that group of people, this religion, and the other. It never has been stable. It's been relatively stable under the initial Islam expansion. It was stable for a certain area of Egypt on up through Syria and that sort of thing under Saladin. The most stable it's been in recent history was the Ottoman Empire. But even that, you had factions and warfare and personalities within all of these various areas battling back and forth. And so it's never been stable from the standpoint of what we believe is stable when we think of that word. They've always been a problem, and they will continue to be a problem because of the variety of racial differences, religious differences, even within the Muslim world, etc. And it's a serious mistake for us to be involved in all of that. It doesn't do us any good. But at any rate, be that as it may, historically it's a mess. Historically, I believe, into the future, it will be a mess. Even if we stabilize it today, it will become unstable very shortly after that. Another thing that we've talked about is the control of the European Union over immigration and that sort of thing into your EU member nations like Hungary and Austria and etc. And now we see that the European Union is taking over the border patrol. In other words, the borders of these nations are no longer going to be controlled by the countries themselves, but by the EU, whatever that means. Basically what it means is that the EU Commission will tell these border guards of these so used at one time independent states that this is what you're going to do or not to do. And speaking of the immigration that has caused this, the migration really, a lot of people are not looking north from the United States into Canada. Most people are not aware that thousands of Syrian refugees have been settled into Canada in the last year or so. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's paying any attention to it. That is a problem if there are terrorists in that group of people. And it not only for Canada, but particularly for the United States. Now, let me give you a little vignette. I was invited out for dinner at a member of the John Birch Society's ranch. His northern fence line is the Canadian border. He's got a cattle ranch, and his fence runs right along the border. And on the way there, I had to be given a map by this individual to tell me how to get to his ranch, because it's on all these back roads and lumber roads and that sort of thing, logging roads. And so while I'm driving into his place, I notice a lot of turbaned individuals, not a lot, but a few, walking south with knapsacks on their back. Obviously, they've come across the Canadian border in areas where there are no border guards, and they seem to know where these roads are. I didn't know where these roads are. They're not on the map. But these people knew. Now, we always look at the southern border as a problem, but the northern border is a problem as well. And there are other aspects of people being infiltrated in the United States on shipping containers and even whole ships and that sort of thing that we're not paying any attention to. So Syrians going into Canada can be a problem for the United States just as much as if they come and settle here. In some areas, it's very, very easy to walk across the border at night. It's not a problem at all. Lastly, in speaking of terrorism, here's an interesting headline from the USA Today a couple of days ago. Saudi-owned company services Air Force One. Now, you know, I go through TSA and everything at the airport all the time, and so on and so forth, and yet Air Force One is being serviced by a Saudi Arabian-owned company. Keep in mind that 9/11, most of those people that were involved in that were Saudis. So I find it rather kind of startling to see that that's what they might be doing. Are they actually infiltrating in there and doing anything on Air Force One? Well, right now, maybe not. But one day, 1 hour, 1 minute in the future, they might. So I find it rather strange that A, they're using a foreign-owned company to service Air Force One, and secondly, the country which is doing the servicing. A lot of questions involved in that. Until next week, we'll see you then.